Welcome to Love and Murder. I'm your host, Ky. Everybody loves seeing twins. I mean, they're so cute, right? Twin babies, twins who dress alike, twins who murder together. How about it, guys? It's double trouble in tonight's show. It's a twin thing, right now, on Love and Murder. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Love and Murder. I am your host, Ky, and we're not joined by Char. We had some things come up, and we were not able to record on our normal day, so Char was not available. But I don't want to miss another day. We've been so inconsistent that Love and Murder has turned into Love and Whenever. That sounds weird. But anyways. Like I said, I'm your host, Ky. This is Love and Murder, the show where we talk about relationships gone terribly wrong. And normally I would say, how wrong, Char? And she would say, dead wrong, Ky. And I would say dead wrong. So our show is a true crime podcast talking about relationships, whether it's marriage, dating, mother-daughter, and not dating mother-daughter, but you know what I'm saying. Mother and daughter relationship, mother and son relationship, that kind of stuff. And that's what our show basically is about. Just relationships gone horribly, horribly wrong. Check out our podcast on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Links will be in the bio, and I'll say it at the end of the show. I don't like to clog up the beginning of the show with all of that. But if you want to hear me say the links instead of just clicking on the links in the bio, you can wait towards the end of the show, and I'll definitely say these links for you. If you want bonus episodes of the craziest true crime stories, relationship question and answers, relationship advice, or Char's crazy life, then visit us over on patreon.com/love and murder and become a subscriber of $3 and above. You should also go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube. We really have some good stuff that's about to drop, and I don't want y'all to miss it. So go ahead and go over to our YouTube. Link is below in the show notes, and go ahead and become a subscriber. It doesn't take you any time, 2 seconds. If you've listened to our show before and you like it, please go to Apple Podcasts, hit that purple button and give us 5 stars and say whatever you want in the description. Let us know you're tired of Char missing. Is this a Ky show? Is this a Ky and Char show? What's going on? If you do that, it does help bring us up in the charts, and it gets other people to easily find our podcast. So without further ado, let's get into our story tonight. So like I said, tonight we're going to talk about crime of a different kind, a different relationship type crime. So we're going to be talking about twins. I mean, the intro already gave that away, but still, surprise, twins. So some of these stories are crazy. Like the first one that I'm going to be talking about is going to be long. This rap sheet is crazy long. But, all of these stories are centered around just twins, twin brothers, twin sisters, whatever, twins who committed crimes. And we actually have an honorary mention in there because we actually did a full episode about twins already. So imagine that. So the first set of twins that I'm going to tell y'all about, and forgive me because I don't know how to pronounce this name, but I should have looked it up, shouldn't I have? But I didn't. I didn't listen to somebody saying the name. So anyways, it's going to be the Spahalski Brothers. I think it's the Spahalski Brothers. Now, both of their names were Robert and Stephen, and that's Stephen with a PH. Robert and Stephen Spahalski were born on December 12th, 1954 in Elmira, New York. They kind of had a rocky childhood. Their parents divorced when they were 12, and they were raised just by their mom. Now, my daughter came and asked me, why does this usually happen? Like either the dad takes off or the mom ends up just raising the kids by themselves, like the dad isn't really around. And I didn't really have an answer for her. That's a really interesting phenomena, because just because you get a divorce doesn't mean the father should just be out of the children's life. Now, Don't get me wrong. I know that some mothers make it difficult for the father to be in his children's life, so I could understand that, but sometimes they don't, and the father's still not there. So I didn't have an answer for her because I don't know. But anyways, their parents divorced when they were 12, and they were raised by a single mother. And once I go through everything, you'll understand that it seems like they took this really, really hard, because it's kind of around that time that they started getting in trouble. This is around the time they started like stealing cars, doing arson, trespassing, theft, and then murder. And all of this started at like age 15. So like a couple years after their father left, but still, they were building to all of this. So I found a site that actually lists Robert I don't know how to say the name, Spahalski Robert's charges, everything that he's gone through. But his brother Stephen was very hard to find what he did. But in the end, they ended up doing the same thing. And so I'll tell you about that in the end. But I'm going to tell you just Robert's crimes and everything he was charged with. So let's go through this. In July 1971, Robert was charged with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle after being stopped by police in Elmira. So he was basically 15 at this time, and he was driving somebody's car, maybe his mom's car, without permission, and more than likely he didn't have a license. So he was stopped by police, and that's when the first time he was caught. Let me put it that way. That's not the first time he did anything. Then August 1971, that's just the next month, he was charged with felony arson after he set fire to a stage curtain and a flag at his school. So 15, what is that? He's in high school. So he set fire to the curtain and a flag at his high school. And then October, so that's the same year, October, when he's still 15, he was ordered to serve 15 weekends in jail after he pleads guilty to unauthorized use of a stolen vehicle. So that was when he stole the vehicle in July. So he had to serve 15 weekends in jail. I guess he still had to go to school and everything like that. So he just went to jail. Then November 24th, same year, still 15, a guy named Ronald Ripley was found murdered in his New York store. That's still in Elmira Heights. So he was found murdered in the store. Nobody knew who did it. They turned to Robert, thinking Robert did it, but I'll come back later to that and give you the story on that one. December 1971. So still again in the same year. So he turned 16 now. He pled guilty to criminal trespass charges after he returns to a business in Elmira where he should not have been. He wasn't allowed on that premises, and he went back to it anyway. So he got criminal trespassing charge put on him. Now, July 1973, he was found guilty of taking $3,000 in cash and equipment from a music store. So basically he stole equipment and money, and he got 5 years in prison for that. But he was released from prison in 2 years. He was released from prison in 2 years. So by this time he's 21? So September 1975, he was released. And then July 1976, he's charged with third-degree burglary after breaking into a high school in Elmira. Now, I wonder if that was his high school that he went to. So anyway, he broke into that high school. Why? I don't know, because he's a grown man at that time. And he was convicted and sentenced to 2 to 5 years at an Auburn correctional facility. July 1978, allegedly, one of the brothers hid in the false bottom of an army truck that was being sent to a government agency. Now, the reason I said allegedly is because they think he was in there, but they also think that he evaded officers and ran into a vocational auto body shop at the prison. And both brothers happened to work at that auto body shop, and they didn't know, number one, if one of the brothers were in that false bottom, and if one of them were, they didn't know which one, so they couldn't prove it. This is why I said allegedly. November 1979, he was released from Auburn Correctional Facility. So he's only in his 20s now. July 81, so that's about a year and some later, he was charged with theft after police said he and an accomplice stole a coin collection that was valued at $15,000. August, which is the next month, 81, he pled guilty to stealing that coin collection, and then he got sentenced to 2 to 5 years in Attica Correctional Facility. September 1984, he began his term in Attica for the theft of the coin collection. I wonder why it took so long. Because that was 81 when he pled guilty, and then he didn't even begin his sentence till 84. Anyways, it was supposed to be 2 to 5 years. December 84, he was released from prison, and then he moved to Rochester, New York. So he went in September and was released in December. Interesting, but it took them 3 years for him to even get to prison. Interesting. Anyways, July 87, so now he's like 33 here. He enters state prison in Attica after being convicted of attempted burglary in Monroe County. So, I mean, to me, it's like they're not really punishing him because he's not finishing any of his sentences. And so he just keeps doing what he's doing. He enters prison in 87. He was released in 89, so around this time he's 34. And then December 31st, 1990, he killed Maureen Armstrong in her apartment. Basically, he strangled her with an electrical cord. Then July 91, Adrienne Berger, which was his girlfriend, was found dead in her apartment. This was in Rochester, New York. Then September 91, so he's 36 now, Robert and another man were arrested in Gates on charges of robbing someone. He robbed a Salvation Army employee at gunpoint. Then in October of 91, he beat this guy named Charles Grand to death, then stole his money and the car. Then he just drove around Rochester with a prostitute with him and was stopped by the police. He pretended that he was Charles, and so the cop was like, okay, well, have a great night, Mr. Grand, and he was allowed to drive off. Wow. Then December 91, the robbery-related charges are dismissed after a grand jury declines to indict him. August 92, so he's 37 now, he was identified in the killing of Charles Grand. And he was identified as the man driving Charles's car and identified as the man impersonated him. And so he's charged with criminal impersonation, but then he's acquitted and went home. In November 2005, so like he's 50 now, he kills Vivian Irizarry. So he walked up to the front desk at the Rochester Public Safety Building and he just tells the officers, hey, I just killed somebody and this is who I killed. And so that was November 4th, November 9th. He's charged with the murder of Vivian as well as the murder of Charles. And he actually confessed to 4 murders in total. Then in November 2006, so he's 51 now, his murder trials began. In December 2006, he was sentenced, and the sentences were 100 years in prison. And December 21st, 2006, at 52 years old, he begins his prison sentence at Great Meadow. So I think it was just that he just got tired of being out, I think, because he's the one who turned himself in. And then he told of 4 murders that nobody knew about. So I think he just really got tired. He had a life of crime. So the one that I told you of, November 24th, 1974, where Ronald Ripley was found murdered in his store, they thought Robert had something to do with it, but later on, Stephen confessed to doing this murder. Let me get into it and y'all can understand what happened. So with everything that Robert was doing, Stephen was actually the first one to kill somebody. So the story the case that I'm telling y'all about, which is, he killed this guy, he did that in 1971 when he was 17, and he hit Ronald Ripley over the head with a hammer and then stabbed him to death. So Ronald Ripley was 48 years old and Stephen was only 17. And I made a mistake. Actually, everything started when they were 17. My math was kind of off. I'm just now thinking about it. And yeah, they were born in 54 to 71. So everything started at 17. So anyways, yeah, so Stephen was the first one to kill and Robert didn't even know about it. Robert thought that he was the only one doing all this crime. Robert was doing little petty crimes, but Stephen brutally murdered somebody. So what happened was the authorities brought Stephen in for questioning, and while he was in there for questioning, he ended up confessing that, yeah, I did kill Ronald. And he said the reason why he did it was because Ronald made unwanted homosexual advances on him. And later on, he gave this interview and he reiterated that, and he said, quote, Ronald came after him in a homosexual way, and so he killed him. He stabbed him. So this is his reasoning for killing Ronald Ripley. And then also, in another twist, while he was being booked into that jail, so he was in the Chemung County Jail, I think that's how you say it, Chemung County Jail, officers noticed that his twin brother was already there. So they were like, they were just like, what in the world? So that's how they found out that they were both committing crimes. They didn't know they were doing this, and they didn't know they were both killing people, but that's how they found out. They thought they were each the only killers in the family, and then they found out that, I guess twins share more than you thought they did. And as for Robert's murders, so like I said, the first time he killed somebody was Maureen Armstrong, and he actually started killing because he was addicted to crack. This is what the reports are saying. So remember, he confessed to 4 murders. So the first one was Maureen Armstrong in Rochester, New York. And she was the one who had the electrical cord. She was killed with the electrical cord. So they found her with the electrical cord wrapped around her neck. Actually, Robert didn't leave. He didn't run away. He actually hung around. And when the cops showed up, he was just, some guy hanging around. And he answered questions. He spoke with the cops and everything like that. He didn't tell them he killed her, but he was just there, and they didn't realize that he's the one who did it. And he actually, was like, yeah, we were friends. That's just shocking to hear. Obviously, this isn't what he said, but he admitted that he was her friend. So, but, they had no reason to, why is he here? Did he do it? He was just basically hanging around like anybody else would hang around the scene of a crime. His second murder was, like I said, he killed his girlfriend, Adrienne Berger. When she was actually found in her apartment. And that's at a time that Rochester had a heat wave going on. And so by the time, authorities found her body, it was way badly decomposed. And so they couldn't figure out why she died, how she died, who killed her. There was no evidence around. Her body again was decomposed, so they didn't have any evidence on her. So it was just, it's a dead person here. So they couldn't pin it on him. The third person he killed was the Charles Grand guy. Now, I don't know if it's Grand or Grandi or Grande. It could be any one of them. So I'm just going to say Charles Grand. So the third person he killed was the Charles Grand guy. What is weird about this is he actually killed Charles in a similar way that his brother Stephen had killed his first victim. So, it was just like, really? Like, y'all are, I don't know, maybe it's a twin thing, but that's still, twins and murder is still weird. So if Charles, he beat him to death with a hammer, the reason he did this, it was because of something sexual also. They had gotten into an argument over payment, but it's not really clear over payment of what, if this guy was advancing towards him in a sexual way or what. So anyways, and then the fourth time he killed someone was the Vivian Irizarry. He was actually on crack at that time, and I guess he had like a really bad trip, because to him, Vivian turned into a demon, he said, and he thought he had to destroy her. So he strangled her to death and then, bathed her body, I guess I don't know why. I don't want to speculate, because if he's saying like he was strung out on crack, then maybe he bathed her body for a reason as to, I guess, why he saw her as a demon, or he wasn't that strung out on crack and he bathed her body to get the DNA and stuff off of it. So anyways, he strangled her, he gave her a bath, and then he placed her body in the basement. This one he actually felt really bad about. In an interview, he would say that he came, he would come back to the body and he would cry and he would apologize to Vivian for killing her and everything like that. And he actually couldn't handle this. He couldn't handle what he had done. So remember I said he went to jail, like he confessed, and I was just like, well, maybe he was just tired of living on the outside. So, going through the story even more is just that he felt really guilty for killing his friend. And so he went to the police station and basically turned himself in. And that's when he told that he'd killed 4 people in total. So that's what happened. And because he killed 4 people, now he's known as a serial killer. So yeah, and that's what happened with the twins. So Robert is still in prison. He's in Great Meadows Correctional Facility. Stephen is out. He's been in and out, but right now he's out. But that's the story of the Spahalski twins. And there's actually a book about them. It's called Killer Twins by Michael Benson, if you want to read more about them. So that was the most extensive story that I had, because I just couldn't believe how much stuff they did. So we're going to go over a couple more. So the next story we have is on the Kray Brothers. Their names are so much easier. But the Kray Brothers actually ran a mafia-style operation. And when I say mafia-style, I mean deadly mafia-style operation in London's East End. And this began in the 1950s and lasted through the 1960s. The Kray Brothers were born in 1933, and they were known as the most notorious identical thugs to ever roam the streets of London. So their names were Reggie Kray and Ronnie Kray, and they were raised very, very poor, but they ended up making a name for themselves because they started going into boxing and everything. They were amateur boxers, but they were really, really good at it. And they ended up moving up really quickly in the boxing world. And from the money they made, they ended up investing it into nightclubs. So they ran glamorous nightclubs on the West End, So they grew up on the East End. They did their business on the West End. These nightclubs were like really popular. So like actors and actresses and quote unquote important people went there. So like people like Judy Garland went there. And so you would just see like big name people at these clubs. So that's how like famous they were. That's how quote unquote important they were. But that life didn't appeal to them much. So they actually began to engage in extortion. They started doing armed robbery. They started doing arson. They even have some hijacking stories on them. They assaulted people, and even torture and murder are labeled to their names. This person named John Person said, quote, "In gang fights, they seem to be telepathic as if they were one." So that just kind of tells you like they did everything together, all of these. So it's not like the previous twins we talked about. They knew exactly what they were doing together, and they did it together. Even when they fought, they fought as if they were one person. This is what, witness reports said. But it definitely was said that they only killed other gangsters. They didn't harm anybody in the public. They only killed other gangsters. Now, in 1968, they were arrested and convicted for the murders of Jack the Hat McVitie. So Reggie killed him. And then George Cornell, which Ronnie killed him. So yeah, everything came to a stop in 1968 when they were finally arrested. And then Ronnie died of a heart attack in 95. And Reggie had cancer. And he was released from prison in 2000. But he died like some weeks after he was released from prison. And with them, these twins, a movie was actually made starring Tom Hardy. So Tom played both twins, and the name of that movie was actually called Legend. And if I remember correctly, it came out in 2015. So that's a movie I'm going to watch. I'm interested in watching it. So if you want to watch it, it's called Legend. Came out in 2015, starring Tom Hardy. Now, the next set of twins we're going to talk about is the Whitehead Sisters. So these are our first women that we're going to talk about. So these twins' names are Jazmaya and Tasmaya. So Jazmaya, she goes by Jazz, and Tasmaya goes by Taz. So Jazz and Taz. Whitehead, they were born to single mother Jarmeka Nikki Whitehead in Conyers, Georgia. They ended up living with, even though their mom was a single mother, they ended up living with their great grandmother for 2 years. And once they lived with her, I guess they were just kind of like getting out of hand, and I'll tell you why I say that. But then they moved back with their mother when they were teenagers. The reason why I say they were getting out of hand is because their grandmother, their great grandmother, it's not even their grandmother, their great grandmother would say that, sometimes she would have to lock their door or lock her bedroom door when she went to bed because, she was just worried about what they might do. So I guess she was like, I'm too old for this, and she sent them back to their mother. So one day when the twins were 16, they said they came home to find their mother just brutally killed. And the reason I use the word brutally is because there was like blood everywhere. It was just puddles of blood on the carpet, blood on the walls, and everything like that. And they came home to see their mother like that. So when the cops got there, they assessed the scene and found out what happened. And it turned out that she was stabbed. She was fatally stabbed. She was beaten. And then she was also found submerged in the bathtub. Lieutenant Chris Moon on the Conyers Police Department said, quote, he said, "It was the bloodiest scene I think I've ever been to." Now, for a cop to say that, that's wow. So the twins were taken in for questioning. They were taken in for questioning just, did you see anything? How was the scene when you got there? And when they were taken in for questioning, they were visibly distraught and crying, as anybody would be if they found their mother in this position. But after a while, with all the questioning and everything that was going on, police realized that something didn't add up. And so they began really, really questioning the girls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically read to you the transcript of what happened. Detective: "What time did y'all leave the house this morning?" Jazmaya: "We missed the bus, so we had to walk." Detective: "You walked all the way to Rockdale?" Tasmaya: "It's not far." Detective: "Is that the clothes you wore to school today?" Jazmaya: "Yes." Detective: "Hey girls, we're going to have to get you guys some clothes, and I'll tell you why. You were in the crime scene." So at this point in time, the girls had on gloves even while they were in the police station. So the police, asked them to remove your gloves. Detective: "Let me see your hands and arms. What happened here?" Jazmaya, after she removed her gloves: "I got in a fight with her here." And when she said that, Jazmaya pointed to Tasmaya. So then this is where detectives separated the girls. So they decided to question them separately. So now this is the detective talking to Taz. Detective: "Taz, I want you to come here with me. I want to talk to your sister." Taz: "Why do y'all have to separate us?" Detective: "Because we need to talk to you separate. I know it sounds mean, but it's really not." Let's rewind back a little bit. During the questioning, there was also surveillance tape that was found that showed that the girls only actually walked to a gas station and then ended up hitchhiking to school with a stranger. And then they got to school 2 hours late, as the cops saw in the school surveillance camera. Then, going through the girls' background, they do see that they have a history of domestic violence, domestic trouble, and they just were not getting along with their mom for years. And they also found a handwritten letter that was from Jazz to her boyfriend. She wrote, quote, "I just hate living here being with her." So this is what she said in a letter to her boyfriend. And then on surveillance tape while she was at the police station, Taz was like, "I told her I wish she was dead, and she really did die. I told her that plenty of times, and she never died." And so that's just, some backstory and some stuff that happened while they were being questioned. So, like I said, they ended up separating them. And obviously, when they separated them, they tried to stick to their story. But being that they were apart and they couldn't feed off each other, the story started, falling apart. So what happened was they actually got in a fight with their mom that started in the kitchen after they woke up late for school. Their mom had, she was upset, annoyed, I'll more say, that these girls had woken up late for school. And she was like, you're not going to just sit here and wake up late for school. You live in my house. You're going to live by my rules, and you need to wake up on time and get to school on time. So the twins said that the mother started threatening them with a pot on the stove. And they said she was just waving the pot around, So, they figured she was trying to hit them with the pot. And so they said they wrestled the pot away from her. But, that's kind of where everything started. And so, they said mom was yelling, they were yelling, and somehow the mother got a knife from the knife block. This is what they're saying. So one of them had the pot. I think it was Taz had the pot. The mother had the knife. And then Jazz is probably standing by her sister. And so they're all fighting in the kitchen. And the fight moved into the living room and just got worse in the living room. And Jazz ended up breaking a red vase over her mom's head. And that's when her mom started bleeding. And so her mom started fighting back, as you would, but you're kind of going up against two other women, because as teenagers, you're basically women by then. So she's going up against two other women with a head injury. But, the fight or flight, you kind of get jacked up with that adrenaline. So Taz said her mom was winning. So what she ended up doing was the pot that she had, she hit her in the head with the pot. So first they hit her in the head with a vase. Then they hit her in the head with the pot. Then the mom bit her on the chest. So bit Taz on the chest. Was it Taz or Jazz? The mom bit Jazz on the chest, and she wouldn't let go. So Jazz is like trying to get her to let go, and she wouldn't let go. And then that's when Taz stabbed her. And so, the fight went on. And at some point, Jazz started to choke her mother with a medallion. So, like when your child wins, like, I don't know, best reader in the class when they were little, that kind of medallion. So she started choking her mom with that kind of medallion that she had won as a child. And then her mother basically punched her in the face. She said she was surprised that her mom punched her, and so she picked up the knife and started stabbing her too. But she said she didn't stab her deeply because she couldn't bring herself to stab her mom deeply, which, okay. But then after all of that, they said, with the punching, stabbing, everything that was going on, they dragged her to the bathtub, and then they couldn't really explain what happened after that, and they couldn't really explain why they did this. Basically, to carry her in the bathroom, Taz had her hands, Jazz had her feet, and then they put her in the bathtub, and they said when she was in the bathtub, she was still alive, and they sat there and talked to her while she was dying. And, cops asked her, what did she say? And Jazz said that she hates us, and that they're going to jail. And they said they were saying, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to, I'm sorry. I don't think they were saying that. This is just me. I don't know. I don't think they were saying that. And then basically, I guess all this time they're filling up the bathtub. The mom couldn't get up. She's tired. She's stabbed up, losing blood. And so she went into the water. She kept trying to bring her head up, but she went into the water a couple of times, and then, she couldn't bring her head back up anymore, so she drowned. And they asked the sisters what they did after that, and they said they were just kind of shocked. They cried, and then they argued, and then they got themselves together. They tried to clean up some, and then they decided the best thing to do was go to school, leave the crime scene, and try and just act normal. They gathered their mom's cell phone, they got the knife, they got the pot, they got her mom's purse, and they put all of that in a plastic bag. They went to school, and they thought when they got back from school, the police would be there, and they thought, everything would be cleaned up and the police would have been waiting for them. But when they got back home, it was just as they left it, and they didn't expect that. And then that's when, they tried to act like they came home and this is how they found it. And they said they wish they had called the cops during the fight instead of after the murder. They wish their mother was still alive. And they were saying that, they miss her and everything. But this is what they said. Now, the funny thing is, that week before her death, the mother had actually called the police 3 times, due to problem with her quote unquote out of control daughter. And her friends and her co-workers they weren't surprised that, the suspects of who killed the mother was the twins. They weren't surprised about that because everybody knew that Taz and Jazz were just really, really difficult to handle. That's their story. They killed their mom and they lied about it. And even though it found out that they killed their mom because they couldn't keep their story together, I think the whole I'm sorry, we told her we were sorry and everything like that, I think that part still made up. I just really don't think they like their mother. If you look in all the notes that was sent and what everybody's saying, I don't think they like their mother. So that was the story of twins Jazz and Taz. The quoted conversations that I read before, I just want to point out, came from 11alive.com. So, the next set of twins we're going to talk about is the Nicholson brothers. With these brothers, Tim and Todd Nicholson, they look like the crime was just within themselves. Years of conflict that resulted in the death of wealthy Todd Nicholson have ended in a prison term for his twin brother Timothy. Timothy Nicholson, 22, was convicted Monday of manslaughter in the fatal shooting of his brother Todd at the climax of a bitter quarrel. So these quotes that I'm reading right now has come from an Associated Press story that was published on June 7th, 1965. So, quote, witnesses for the defense testified Todd possessed an explosive, almost psychotic temper, and his temper was often aimed at Timothy. They also said Todd had taken out a $1 million life insurance policy on Timothy's life, then presented himself as Timothy for the physical examination. That's end quote. So basically what happened is, it seemed like he was always beating on Timothy. Todd was always beating on Timothy. And then he went so far as to take out a $1 million life insurance policy. So this seems like, I wonder if he did that after he killed Timothy. And then he took out the $1 million life insurance policy and then showed up as his twin brother. Interesting. Good Lord. That means he wasn't even sad his brother was dead. He was just thinking about the money. So he told cops that him shooting his brother was accidental, but the cops still went to seek a former murder charge on him. And in the shooting, he actually shot his brother twice. And he admitted shooting his brothers twice, but he denied that he was trying to murder his brother. He just said, basically he was angry, they got into a scuffle, and he accidentally shot his brother twice. And even though he took out this $1 million life insurance on his brother, both brothers had actually inherited $500,000 4 years prior to that. So I wonder if that money was running out. I don't think he killed him on purpose for the money. I think it was just he killed him for whatever reason, they were fighting or whatever, and then he thought about the money. But he ended up killing his brother, said it was an accident. But they charged him for murder. And one of the reasons that they did charge him for murder was the cops basically said there was enough evidence of conflict between physical evidence and what he was telling them to justify, arresting him for the murder of his twin brother. So that is the story of the Nicholson brothers. I don't think they have a book or a movie out about them. I mean, I'm sure somebody wrote a book about them, but they're not one of the more famous ones. The next brothers, though, they're not famous, but it's crazy what happened with them. So these are the Berndt Brothers. Berndt Brothers. Berndt Brothers. So 48-year-old twins, Edwin and Edward. That would be so hard to say. That's too close together. But Edwin and Edward Berndt were charged with felony murder after police discovered their mother's body covered in bugs in their Houston home. A neighbor reportedly told authorities she hadn't seen the mother in months, and when police arrived to the house, it was just in a horrible condition. It was just messy, trashy, filthy, smelled horribly, and then they saw like this absurd amount of flies on the curtains of the windows. So they looked around or whatever, and then they found the mother, whose name was Sybil Berndt, and she was 88 years old. She was face down on the floor, dead. So they're wondering what happened, what's going on. Did her sons kill her or whatever? Well, they got the story. Her sons told them that, they were watching the football championship game, and this happened in January. They were watching the game in January when the mother walked in, but then she slipped on something and she fell. And the son said they just left her on the floor, and she was still alive. She was conscious, talking to them, and, they had conversations with her for like 3 days, and then she finally died. And when the cops came and found her, this was in April. So she'd been sitting there from January to April, 4 months. Good Lord. And, even though she just laid on the floor and died and was dead for 4 months, the twins just continued living in the house. When they needed to get by their mother, they just stepped over her body. And that was it. So they were arrested. They weren't really arrested for murder, but they didn't report the mother's body or anything like that. They didn't report her dying or anything. So they were arrested, but a grand jury ended up dropping the murder charges against the twins, because according to their defense attorney, the brothers, which one of them had a form of autism that people are more familiar with this now. It's called Asperger's syndrome. And the other was just very, very mentally disabled, that he wasn't really functional. They were not really clear on what was going on with their money. With their mother. It's like you have two sets of babies and their mother dies. They don't know that you should call the cops or whatever. So the grand jury basically dropped the murder charges because to them, these boys shouldn't have even been arrested in the first place, which I agree. I just wonder what the final thoughts of the mother were, because she knew her sons really couldn't take care of themselves, and she was probably really worried about them. She was probably trying to tell one of them to, go get help or something like that, but they just really didn't understand. But not to blame. But I think she should have had something in place, just in case something like this happened. She should have had, some kind of emergency procedure, or somebody checks in on them at least every week or something like that. But normally she's taking care of 2 boys like this or 2 men like this. She's been doing it her whole life. She probably wasn't thinking about it at all. It's just a lot going on in life. You don't think about these things, So, that's really a sad story to hear. The next set of twins I have for you are the Bondurant Brothers. So these brothers are named Hugh Bondurant, which they called him Pete. Maybe that's his middle name? I don't know. And Kenneth Patterson Bondurant, which they call him Pat, which that makes more sense. And they were born in Giles County, Tennessee. And they were convicted in 1991 of the murder of a woman named Gwen Duggar. She was a 24-year-old mother who initially had disappeared in Alabama. And this happened in 1986. So she just, she was mother from Ardmore, Alabama, 1986. Just completely disappeared, and her body was never found. They were actually found to be the murderers due to a mistake that they made when they were trying to get rid of the evidence. So in going over their story, I think we're going to actually do a show on these insane twins because their story is crazy. They were also convicted of 2 murders that they did separately. Pat beat his co-worker in 1986. Again, I don't know what they were thinking in 1986. They were just going crazy then, but he beat his coworker to death. And Pete killed his girlfriend, also in 1986. Now, the coworker that Pat killed, Pete helped him dismember and burn. So yeah, we're definitely going to do a story on these brothers because they're crazy. So the next set of twins we're going to talk about is the Sotolongo Brothers. Their names are Tyrone and Jerome, not Jerome, but Jerome with an N. Tyrone and Jerome Sotolongo. And they actually committed 3 murders, or they were linked to 3 murders in California in 2013. Now, Tyrone killed a 21-year-old man in a drive-by shooting in December of 2013, and they think that either Tyrone or Jerome or both of them killed 3 other people from between 2011 and 2012, and all of these were shootings as well. I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy, but it's not as bad as the previous brothers that we just talked about. I think it was more maybe, I don't know, could that be gang related or something? I didn't really delve into this one, but to me it looks like they were doing gang related stuff, and it was just drive-by shootings and, all this craziness. Not to say that's not bad, but, I want to do an honorary mention of one of the stories we had, which was Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe. They were twins. And if you listen to episode 19, which is called Sister Act, you'll get the full story on these 2, which that was an insane story. The last set of twins I have for you, it's not murder related, but it's very interesting because of the end of the story. So there was a jewelry heist at a Berlin department store in 2009. And what happened was 3 masked men ended up stealing $6.5 million worth of jewelry. But then they left behind a rubber glove that had sweat on it. So police used the traces of the DNA from that sweat to find Hassan and Abbas O. And they were 27-year-old twins. I don't know their full names because this is something I just learned today. By German law, that can't be disclosed. So this Hassan and Abbas, they have records on file of theft and fraud. So when the German police ran their DNA, they came up in the database. But the problem is, since they're identical twins and they shared 99.99% of their genetic information, investigators couldn't figure out which one of the brothers left the sweaty glove behind. So with the DNA basically was no good because there was it's either one of them, and you can't just say, hey, it's not like if you're a child, okay, if I know one of y'all did it, but nobody's confessing, all of y'all gonna get it. That's not how it works in real life. So they did 5 weeks of searching for further leads, further evidence. They couldn't find anything, so they had to release the brothers. And this is a quote from them. Quote, "From the evidence we have, we can deduce that at least one of the brothers took part in the crime, but it is not possible to determine which one." And I wonder if they got away with it, but I wonder if they got away with it with the money. That would have been just, wow. Can you imagine that? Lord, if you have an identical twin, But anyways, if you like this episode of, it's a twin thing, go to Apple Podcasts, hit the purple button, and give us 5 stars. You can say whatever you want to in the description, but this helps bring us up in the chart. Don't forget to visit us on Patreon and become a subscriber for crazy bonus episodes and to hear your name said at the end of the show, depending on what tier that you subscribe to. Also, go ahead and follow us on our YouTube because we have amazing content that's about to be dropped and you don't want to miss it. Our YouTube link is in the show notes below. Don't forget to subscribe. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/relationshipcrime, Instagram at Love Murder Podcast, our brand new Facebook fan page at Love and Murder Fan Page. Just search that in the Facebook search bar. And don't forget, we have your true crime merch right here on Threadless. Just go to loveandmurder.threadless.com and you'll get all kind of merch. You'll get mugs, you'll get pins, you'll get stickers, you'll get magnets, you'll get shower curtains, you'll get phone cases, masks, shirts, duvet covers, pillows. I mean, you get the work. So just go to loveandmurder.threadless.com and you can find that. Or to just make it easy on you, just go to www.murderandlove.com. That's love and murder backwards, murderandlove.com. And you can find everything right there in one place on our website. Another way you can support us that takes only 2 minutes and is completely free is by simply sharing this episode. Just hit share and share it to your social media. Hit share and share it to your friends directly, whatever you want to do. But if you could just share this episode, that'll help us out tremendously and we will be grateful to you. Thank you so much. Now, that's all we have today. Next week, we will be back with a full true crime story, what you're used to from us. And Char should be here, but if not, you'll have me. No worries. But with that said, I want to remind y'all, all love and no murder, y'all. Have a great night. Peace.